Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Shekhar Iyer. I'm the CEO of Arcus. And today it gives me great pleasure to be here at OCP with my friend Pablo from Target. And we're actually going to talk to you in the next 15 minutes about phenomenal retail transformation that has taken place at Target, thanks to Pablo, Jason, and their team at Target in terms of how they have looked at open compute. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I could unmask for this. How they've taken the open compute infrastructure and deployed that inside Target. Let me actually start off just quickly by introducing myself and then have Pablo come up and talk about himself and Target. So at Arcus, just so anyone who's not familiar with the company, so we are a venture-funded company in the Bay Area that is focused on transforming and disrupting the way transport networking is created and developed and deployed in both enterprises as well as in the service provider domain. And the way that we have done this is by disaggregating the layers between what is traditionally a full-fledged system for routing and switching, and instead what we have done is looked at it as an underlying infrastructure for what you can have as the network processor, and then on top of that the operating system, and then on top of that the services that get deployed on top of the Arcus infrastructure. My own background, so I've been at Arcus actually as CEO just for a couple of months. Prior to that I was running the Telecom and Edge Cloud business unit at VMware, and for most of you that are familiar, VMware is an abstraction software company for cloud computing. And in that process, I have, of course, looked at what it takes for us to abstract out both the compute side of the infrastructure as well as the network and storage side of the infrastructure. And with that background, I'm actually delighted to now say that after having helped lead that transformation in the compute industry over the last, 2 decades, we're now turning our attention to what is happening in the networking industry, which is largely, I would say, dominated by platforms from the combination of Cisco, Juniper, Arista, et cetera. And that is the area that we're looking at and saying, look, that needs to be a lot more agile, open, and accessible to customers like Target if they are to create and deploy new applications. So with that, let me welcome Pablo. Pablo, please join me on stage, and if you would introduce yourself. So.
Thank you. This is on? All right, great. Thank you, Shekhar. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Pablo Espinoza, and I am Vice President of Network Engineering at Target, where I am responsible for all hardware, software, and connectivity for the product ecosystem. For those who are not familiar with Target, we're a Fortune 50 enterprise company, well-recognized global brand across retail sectors. And when you are a Target guest, as we call our customers, and shopping either inside of a store or online, it is actually our physical and digital technology that bring those experiences to life. Now, speaking of physical, a little bit of context on kind of the footprint, I would say. You know, our average square footage of a store is roughly about 130,000. Our distribution centers are about 360,000. And then with some more recent fulfillment centers that have been built in the realm of about 1 million. And when you take those two entities alone, we manage a combined fleet of about 1 million end devices, wearables, sensors, that essentially about 70% of that, roughly 70% of that volume requires compute infrastructure. And so at the heart of this, this is essentially what we consider our far edge ecosystem, right? Now, this volume naturally creates a scale, complexity, traffic characteristics, traffic patterns that are very, very unique to, say, a hyperscaler, right? You know, we've been investing pretty heavily in our tech strategy for the past several years. And one of the things that we have started to leverage more recently is our adoption in open source, primarily across our compute platforms. And so today, you know, we are operating a fairly large myriad of microservices across retail applications for, you know, point of sale, price checks, price promotions, digital signage. We run a fairly large volume of code releases daily, weekly, monthly, and even seasonally when we look at our holiday and even seasonal peak traffics. And we set a fairly high bar for ourselves in regards to zero downtime for production changes, specifically to code, right? Now, in addition to all this, right, this volume creates a fairly, I would say, we run, one second. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about too is the sort of the rate of change, right? And the dimension that I wanted to sort of share with you all today was the pandemic that drove unprecedented growth for our business, right? It was fairly explosive for many of you that probably followed it and so forth. And it really put some heavy emphasis on our network. One second here. Now, it wasn't just the growth, but it was actually the volatility of shopping behaviors, right? We had shopping behaviors changing, evolving, really putting enormous pressure on our network, right? And we had to really think about a way to address the agility, the speed for those far edge workloads that I mentioned up here above, as well as think about how do we innovate and how do we prepare for a future-proof network architecture that can help us adapt to those changes. So what did we do about it? Recognizing all these challenges, we really looked at ourselves and we embraced our innovative culture and our commitment to open source, and we set out on a very exciting mission to build a fully disaggregated network, an open platform for the enterprise. And so at a most simplistic form, what is it? It's essentially from a full disaggregation perspective, it's a hardware commodity switch, right? It's a network operating system that's open, flexible. We started out with the community version of Sonic here at OCB, based on the great contributions that ecosystem has made. And then from there, we made substantial investments in creating and deploying an open NAS that was actually fully purpose-driven for Target. And I want to emphasize purpose-driven because it was those far-edge workloads that actually dictated, I would say, the features and protocols that went into developing that architecture. Now, the other part of it is, an open software and merchant silicon framework, right, giving us greater choice across our supply chain. REST APIs to support the entire suite of developer tooling, our infrastructure tooling stack, right? And then finally, a distributed and unified control plane, giving us the full control of our traffic, essentially manageability, visibility, right? To really focus on a more modern retail experience. Now, I've been doing this quite a long time, longer than I ever expected. I've been in the networking industry for quite some time. And I would say, I'm sure many of you can agree, it's an amazing and exciting time for networking, to be in networking right now. And I'm extremely proud to be able to say that we're the first major US retailer to deploy an open network platform for the enterprise. We're deployed in a handful of stores, data center fabrics, right, with plans to actually scale this out in 2022 and beyond. And with the footprint we do have today, we are already seeing benefits, right? I mean, we're still baselining a lot of the traffic, we're baselining the architecture, and we're learning, right? But I would say we're certainly seeing a lot of great benefits coming out of this. And lastly, the one thing I'll share is it hasn't necessarily been an easy journey. I mean, an enterprise retail company going after a full disaggregated solution, plenty of challenges, obstacles along the way, and many learnings as well. And one of the key learnings that I found as we sort of dove into this is the need to engage in a trusted partner with proven experience around network software development to really help us accelerate a best-in-class open NAS. And so thank you very much. And Shaker, I'll have it to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pablo. It was actually phenomenal for us to see, first of all, our engagement with a storied customer like Target. And for most of you know, this past couple of years have been just, in some ways, trying for most of us with the pandemic, but in particular trying for a company like Target that had to actually put up with all the volume of requests that customers brought to them completely unforeseen. So I want to congratulate Pablo and his team, Jason, as well as the rest of the technology team at Target for being able to do this, and of course, privileged to be in a position of helping them in a small measure in terms of how we've supported the activity at Target. Now, from what I did want to do is take the last couple of minutes to tell you a bit more about what we do at Arcus. So think about our engagement with Target at that operating system level that you see in this architecture at the bottom of the stack. And so we look at what Arcus does as, first of all, providing that abstraction layer and the normalization across the underlying processor architecture so that we can, in fact, do everything in terms of right-size software for all the way down from like switching functions right up to complex routing functions, associated, of course, with the right kind of processor underneath us. But then when we step it up one level in this architecture called ACE, or Arrcus Connected Edge, we're also looking at the capability for Arcus to then connect to multiple clouds so that we can actually have a very sophisticated overlay and underlay visibility into the multi-cloud networking architecture. And then equally work with telecom and communication service providers so that they can extend their 5G infrastructures from their core into the edge of the telecom network and sort of bring it into the IP network, if you will. And then crowning all of this on top of the Arcus ACE architecture is the notion of how we orchestrate, automate, as well as provide analytics and visibility into the stack. And so for those of you that deal with the Arcus products, you might have heard of like ArcIQ as an example. ArcIQ is our capability that provides this intelligent ability to go in and introspect as well as extract out data from the Arcus stack so that you can do more intelligent operations and then close the loop in terms of remediation and corrections for the stack underneath. So with that, again, I want to close out by saying that the engagement with Target for us has been extremely beneficial mutually. I mean, for us, it has been delightful to work with such a large-scale enterprise customer in terms of how they're building their network infrastructure in order to future-proof it for continuous growth. I don't know whether I should wish upon Pablo that it grows several times what it did last year or not, but last year was a true testament for growth for a company like Target. And then in terms of their network upgrade and using open platforms and being able to disaggregate it and take the benefit of the open architecture, we've learned a lot in that journey working with Target. And then finally, as we look at the partnership itself, I mean, it is at a beginning phase in terms of how we're working with Target, and I really look at expanding our ability to continue this journey together and then hopefully serve kind of the industry at large in terms of the retail edge transformation. So thank you all for joining us. It's been delightful having you this morning, and thank you, Pablo, for
Absolutely.
coming all the way from Minnesota to actually join us and be here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.